Now in this video, I'm going to explain to you some ideas from my course, and that course is available for sale right now at here. If you just click the link in description, scroll down, you see I'll help you master office politics and protect your career. So there's a link there. And you'll be led to this page where you can learn a bit more about the course and how it can help you. But what I'm going to do in this video is take you through what's going on in terms of men at work, right? Lots of times when you're at work, you feel a lot of pressure to make money, pressure to be the financial provider. And in this, I want to assess the problem, the typical negative reactions that most men have, and then also how you can build a positive solution for yourself, because that pressure is overwhelming. That pressure is something that weighs on you heavily, and particularly when you are in this society where the cost of living is going up, you're dealing with high tax, inflation rates, the cost of your basic living cost, your mortgage or your rent, and then your utility bills, of course. And then on top of that, if you are expected still by this society to be a protector and a provider for others, family members, going on dates with a girlfriend, a foid, your wife, whoever that would be, that actually places a lot of demands on yourself financially. So it's a problem that many men deal with silently, but we're going to dive in deeper to it and address how some of the solutions I have here can actually help you, right? So if we go and look through this, let's look through some of the problems here around it being a silent burden that they have to deal with, right? You have your mortgage, you have to pay the mortgage, the rent, the cost, the savings, all of these things tend to weigh quite heavily on you, right? You have to quietly fund all these different dynamics in your personal life. And a lot of the times, a lot of people don't want to talk about it, but if you have one bad month financially, maybe if you're self-employed or you're dealing with a layoff, all of a sudden your life's thrown in complete disarray. And there's been many studies done on this that have come up time and time again in the past, where it shows that losing a job impacts a man's self-esteem way more than it impacts a woman's self-esteem, right? Because a woman, her personal identity is not socially so tied to that job. And if you're a man, your social status is tied to your job. Your ability to basically have value in this society is tied to your ability to make a good income. It's a bit like a woman's looks is highly held in high regard in terms of how she's valued in society. That's why a woman doesn't like it when she's aging, because, you know, in a sense, she's losing some societal value and social capital and leverage she can use to get men or get other people to do what she wants, right? And it's the same thing a man deals with when he's losing money. He's losing social value, even if it's implied, even though it might be an internal feeling. That's what it comes down to. Now, a lot of these silent financial burdens make you feel like you're going to collapse in society. You're going to go right to the very bottom, be left homeless, not going to be able to maintain your relationship, maintain friendships even, because you have to go out to certain events you might want to go out to with friends and family and spend a certain amount of money or cover the cost of others too. And that can be very difficult to deal with. And that leads to the second problem, is how closely your status is tied to your earnings. You feel like less of a man if you're earning less money. Your salary becomes your self-worth. And what ends up happening is you end up comparing yourself to peers, partners, influence on social media, and you feel a lot of pressure instead of feeling freedom. And what ends up happening here is, particularly with the comparisons, right? Everyone knows about social media not being the best source of, seeing people's reality, because people tend to exaggerate about how much money they're making. Everyone knows about that. But one thing you have to deal with daily, even if you ignore social media and you write off social media influencers as scam artists or exaggerating the amount of money they're making. Everyone knows about Andrew Tate or Dan Blazarian and people like that, Ty Lopez. But on a day-to-day basis, you have to deal with it a lot more in the real world. You have to deal with co-workers who maybe are competing for certain job titles. You deal with people who are in the front office of a business and the back office, and then there might be tension there of who's making a higher salary. And then you have to deal with family members, friends, cousins, sibling rivalry, competition between relatives, competition between people in your age group. Even if you have a friend group, people are competing. Oh, what's his job title? What industry is he in? How much money he's making? And it can lead to a lot of stress. And I realized personally, I find it easier to make friendships with people or be on good terms with people who are outside my industry, where we're not directly competing. When I was in the finance industry, everyone's competing to work in a certain company, to have a certain salary or job title. And then obviously it depends what department you're in, because you could be in a support function or an operational type of role, and obviously you're making a lot less money than someone who's working in a sales role or a trading role. And that puts tension, and you can't really maintain social relationships along very large income gaps, right? If someone's working in sales and trading, they're making significantly more than someone who's supporting that function in a finance or operations role. Same thing you probably deal with in each of your industries, right? Your respective industries. So there's all sorts of things that are tied to earnings, right? Your status, your social life, what you can do, your freedom to a certain extent. And then all of a sudden that social status you had that is quite highly valued. Maybe you're working for a big name company, or you have certain skills that allow you to earn a high salary. That goes from freedom to do what you want, time freedom, financial freedom, freedom to travel, to pressure. How am I going to rebuild the status I once had now that I've lost it, whether it's through a layoff, whether it's through a pay cut, whether it's to a lack of job security. You can't even plan ahead sometimes these days, more than a few months. You want to plan for a few years. Everyone talks about having a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan, but it's like the economy is so unstable, particularly, to be honest, if you're on some of these high paying roles compared to maybe a stable government job. You might be thinking, oh cool, well I know I can make it to the end of the year, next year maybe maximum, but what's going to happen after that? Will there be a layoff, even if you're on a high 6-figure salary? That's going back to the point I mentioned about comparison, right? Comparison really is the theft of joy. There's a popular term that spread throughout social media is that comparison is the theft of joy, which means that you shouldn't be comparing yourself to others so much. And I highly recommend that. Everyone's on their own journey. There's a phrase, just before I move on to the typical negative reactions that most men deal with, there's a phrase out there that I came up with, actually, was called run your own races. If you're running your own race, right, I actually have it written on my whiteboard, is that you don't get caught up in comparing yourself to others. And to give an example relative to myself, right, I walked away from a 6-figure salary in a relatively stable career in financial risk management. I've worked at top firms, you all know, if you watch this channel regularly, companies like Goldman, Morgan Stanley, and HSBC in sales and trading, investment banking type of roles. And I walked away from that to set up my own business, which is to be a career coach, which is what you see here, right? And mainly through the YouTube channel. Now, people would say that's crazy, you're taking a massive hit to social status, it's financially risky, but there's two main reasons I wanted to do it. Firstly, I wanted to be my own boss and be self-employed. And the second thing is to help people by telling the truth rather than constantly being surrounded by a lie, which gets draining for me personally, and also I'm sure for you, and that's partly why you watch this channel. So that's a big risk, right? So if you look at my life, just to make it relatable, because I don't want it to sound ever for myself, I'm living this perfect life. I'm not this fake kind of e-guru. I'm not Anton Creel, if you remember the name. I'm not a $1 million trader who's trying to grift in some type of way like that. I'm trying to give you my real example too. I have mortgage obligations to make. I keep my living costs low, so I have a safety net to help me through my self-employment journey. But also status and things like that, I've given up on that in a sense. The kind of self comparison point. I have self-worth tied to my abilities and my ability to increase my income, but I'm not so concerned with, I need a certain job title to give me a sense of self-worth or work for a particular company. And many people are tied to those insecurities. It's important to bear that in mind when you're pursuing paths, different ways of financial freedom. And then caught up with comparison, just to, like I say, make it relatable to myself and to you too, right? I could be caught up with, you should have stuck with finance career and ride out the 6-figure salary and bought expensive social status items and to play that game. But that's not necessarily what I wanted to do over the longer term. I wanted a bit more freedom there, which is time freedom and financial freedom by keeping my living costs low, not playing the social status game, and also in a sense reducing my pressure. And the pressure varies. You have pressure from self-employment, from getting steady income from your business, whatever that would be, but you also have pressure from a 9 to 5 to perform and be consistent every day, so it can vary. Now, we're going to go through some of the typical negative reactions that happen with many men when they have shame around money. And partly what I wanted to cover, and I'm giving you a brief excerpt throughout this of things I'd include in my course, which is Career Code, right? And the whole point of the course is really to help you outsmart office politics and protect your career growth and your personal growth, because that pressure to be a provider, it can be threatening to lots of people, or crushing. You're crushing yourself by society's scorecard. Oh, have you done this by a certain date? Have you got married by the time you're 30 or 35? Have you bought a house? Have you got two wife and a kid and wife? Have you got a wife and 2 kids? Have you got a pet dog? Have you got a massive garage and have extra storage space to store all the things you don't really need or use? So in my career code program, I'm helping you redefine success based on what you want and how to deal with a lot of the mind games that get played in the corporate environment that lead to you straying from what you actually want, right? I want to help you build real freedom and escape the kind of paycheck trap by being able to really focus on what you want personally. So there's the link there if you're interested, the career code here. Now going back to this, what are some of the typical negative reactions that men have around money? Now, one of them that comes to mind here is a lot of shame around money, right? So they don't talk about their debt. You don't talk about your debt. You don't talk about all the other pressure you're dealing with, right? Like I say, because your self-worth is linked to the amount of money you're making. You end up hiding the fear that you feel falling behind others. Like I say, this constant hyper-competitive game you have to be with every man in society. There's a famous, well, not a famous, but a trending talking point that's gone viral a few times on different internet forums for men, on Twitter and things like that, where it's like the way we're living in society now is every man has to be in perpetual competition with every other man in the world. And you've probably heard the term SMP or SMV, or just to keep it politically correct here, or the dating marketplace has gone global. And people talk about how a woman can scroll through their phone, through their Instagram and their Instagram private messages, their DMs, and then have men from all over the world. It could be rich men, poor men, it could be men with social status, whatever that would be. And a woman living in a small village in the UK, for example, wherever in the world, she would have thousands of options of different multimillionaires trying to date her, hypothetically, right? But people have extended that metaphor to mean that every man is competing with every other man in the world, right? The guy living in Brazil, the Brazilian living in a favela, is competing with Andrew Tate for the same woman, right? Because maybe some Brazilian women are attractive and they date someone like Andrew Tate in Romania over the local Brazilian. It's kind of a weird extension of a metaphor in terms that everyone's competing with each other. And it becomes a bit grating, and I really think you shouldn't see life that way. And what ends up happening is you see this in the gym, you see this at work, you see this everywhere. Every man is trying to compete with every other man. And I understand healthy competition is a good thing, but the way I'd see it is you want to be competing with yourself or where you were previously, not getting caught up in, oh, what if that person got, how can I compete with them? So you want to understand about not getting caught up in playing, keeping up with the Joneses, right? Keeping up with everyone else. And that's why if you have your own path, which is something I keep recommending, you don't get caught up in a lot of the debt traps. You don't end up feeling like emasculated, spending a lot of money on credit cards, buying expensive cars. You're not worried about falling behind. You can see this little race image here. And you don't want to keep pretending everything's fine when it's not, right? I remember listening to a podcast actually where it was a millionaire talking about some of his social life, and he was talking about how his friends work in high-paying legal jobs and how they were doing quite well financially, but they were going out drinking. And when they were going out drinking, they got quite emotional because they realized a lot of them, while they have money and they have social status, they were actually living a paycheck and putting their kids in the top schools, top private schools, paying for their wife's lavish expenses and whatever she wanted, clothes, vacations, whatever. A lot of these guys are not in the best financial position. That's why I don't play the kind of debt game. Don't get caught up being a wage debt slave where you're living way beyond your means and you're just putting on a character like Joker here, pretending everything's okay when actually you're struggling, right? And then you end up suffering silently like the guy in the suit just to keep up with others, right? And then you can't sleep at night, right? That's the whole point of being a minimalist. People think being a minimalist or something like that is a trend or it's just a way of being cheap. Well, what it really is just you basically saying, look, don't want to get caught up with wasting my money and stressing about money for the rest of my life. I don't mind living beneath my means and living within my means, and not in a sense of getting caught up in the game everyone else is getting caught up with. Because like I said, I know many cases of people making high six-figure salaries, but they're not saving a lot. They're just spending a lot on big houses and all the utility bills that come along with that have increased in recent years, and property tax and things like that. Then you've got other people who are just kind of, they don't have kids, but they're playing the social status game to quite an extreme, going on vacations every couple months and feeling like the fun is never going to end. And a lot of people don't realize it's going to end. There's a lot of people in their 40s who are in high-paying mid-management, senior management roles, and a lot of those people are going to lose their job because they're not actually doing much and they're not essential to the company's functioning, right? So let's move on and talk about some of the solutions here, right? So the solution I have here is around defining your sense of success. So we're going to go through this step by step. Firstly, you want to define your success. Now, what is your success? You want to be able to effectively reframe your definition of success. Do you want a big house or do you want a tiny home? Do you want a one-bedroom apartment? And I mentioned a one-bedroom apartment a few times because I live in a one-bedroom apartment, but also because you can always upscale later. You don't have to be a single guy with a 3-bedroom house just hoping for your Cinderella, your perfect Mrs. Right to show up. You can effectively always upscale later. If you want to live in a humble 1-bedroom apartment, that's fine. If you want to move abroad, you should be clear on that goal and how to get there. I know people, for example, who are learning a foreign language because they want to move to that country, but they haven't actually set up their income in a way that they can live in that country, right? They're maybe thinking, for example, some people want to move to Eastern Europe, right? They want to live a more traditional family life. Maybe, let's just say, give an example without being too specific. Someone I know wants to move to, right? And they want to live with their girlfriend there, right? They have a few contacts there. They prefer the lifestyle there. It's a bit more chill and laid back, but they haven't set up a way of making an income so they can live there, right? So they're learning Polish 2 hours every evening, couple nights a week, but you're not actually doing anything to make sure you can live in that location. So it doesn't matter if you become an expert in Polish. You can't live there because you haven't got a path to make money online or make money in that country, or you haven't got a career path there. Then what's the point of learning the language? It's kind of this level of delusion you see with a lot of people. So something I want to advise you there is, once you define your sense of success, you have to think how you can provide to live in that particular lifestyle. So for example, you need to redefine what providing is firstly in the short term, right? Because the short term, it'd be paying for what you need and what your needs are, right? You don't have to think, oh, I have to be a provider for a family when you're a single guy. Obviously, you want to get to a point where you can make more money and live life on your terms, and then introduce a healthy relationship that works for you. But a lot of guys think they want to be providers and they end up spending too much money on pointless things. They're taking a woman on expensive coffee dates every week, or they're going to expensive restaurants to show that they can be the provider. And you're spending all this money on a woman who might not be there next year, right? You're spending your money on friends and family who might not really care about you or be jealous of your success. You're going out for drinks every week that cost a lot of money. I know a lot of people in the corporate world who would go out for drinks. And in London, for example, just to give a rough estimate, right, it's £10 for 1 pint of beer. It depends where you are, but in central London, around some of the top business districts, that's like $12 to $15 per drink, which is a bit ridiculous, particularly if you're going for work drinks and you don't want to be around them, or there's an expectation that you're going to have to buy everyone else drinks, maybe because you're a mid-level manager. You have to think about what you're paying for, right? And let me give you a funny example of this. When I was working in corporate roles, even when I was relatively junior and at mid-levels, I would always want to present myself well. And when it was my birthday, I would buy quite a nice cake from a local bakery, quite a high quality cake. It wouldn't be that expensive, but it would be relatively expensive compared to cheap supermarket cake. So let's just say $40 to $50 roughly, right? For a nice cake for the team. And I thought, oh, that'd be a good example of showing I care about the team, even though I'm not the most sociable person. I just want to say, oh, it's my birthday, not for it to be about me, but for them to enjoy some cake. And I realized my manager's manager, people way more senior than me, people are making many multiples of my income, maybe double, triple, 5 times my income. They would never do that. They would get the cheapest quality box of chocolates for everyone on their birthday. They would get the cheapest cake you can buy at the supermarket for the team. And these people are making 5 times my income in some cases, right? And I remember thinking, this is just cheap behavior, right? And this, bear in mind, we're at a top American investment bank, top European investment bank. And I'm like, I know they can afford a lot more. I know roughly what their salary would be at that level. Is they can definitely afford a lot more. But it showed you how lowly they valued the team, right? They would say all the right things and put on the right act. They really care about the team. We've got this team event to go for, teamwork, drinks, blah. But it showed you when it came to actually putting money where their mouth is, they think the team is just dumb and useless. And I thought, damn, I'm the most junior guy on this team. And I just spent, let's just say $50 on a high quality cake for the team on my birthday. And they've went and got the $10 box of chocolates just to give everyone on their birthday. It really shows you what's going on here, right? So what you're providing for, not just in the provider, the traditional male provider for his wife or girlfriend and kids, but just in general, how you're spending your money, right? And I pulled back on that. Next time it was my birthday. I did that first couple times. I was at each company that I worked at without naming them, you know them. So then after the first or second year, I was like, why am I doing this? I'm getting disrespected, which I mentioned in some of my other videos, by insults by my direct line manager. I'm doing this for the broader team and my more senior managers, if they want to enjoy the cake, not to suck up to anyone, just to have, I realize in life, you want to have standards, right? And something about this society is that everything's about lowering the standards. You see the way people dress, the way they conduct themselves, the way they value their health, the way they value their relationships. Everything's transactional about how I can use it, other people. Everything's about lowering standards. And I realize anytime you try to step up to have some standard, like a high quality local bakery baked cake, maybe a bit better dressed than you normally are, I don't know if people have a problem with it, right? You wear nice clothes, you speak well, you handle yourself with respect. You think people would reciprocate that, but a lot of the times they're envious, or they're like, oh, you're trying to make us look bad by you looking better. No, it's just a matter of self-esteem and self-respect, which seems to be gone from society, but that's the times you're living in. So you just have to be careful about when you're a provider and who you're looking out for, because literally no one is looking out for you if you're a single man, apart from maybe your immediate family members. The next thing is about setting good financial boundaries, right? You want to build real income and real wealth, right? Not just having income coming in and then you're spending it, right? Where are the boundaries you need to set with the money you're spending, with the people you're spending time with? Because there's a phrase, time is money, and I definitely agree with that. Particularly now, you want to spend some of your free time at least focused on your side hustle or developing skills that will allow you to earn more money in your standard 9 to 5, right? And then if we dive a bit deeper into that, right, you want to use your job as a tool and not an identity, right? Many people think their job is an identity. Oh, my job title is what I do. It's like the stereotypical question you'll get when someone will ask you at a party, oh, so what do you do then? Oh, tell me a bit about yourself. And people will just say, oh, I'm an accountant, or I'm a construction worker, right? And I don't like to answer that question. I never see my job as my identity, right? I feel like it's part of what I do, but your job is essentially a tool for your financial freedom, a tool for your time freedom, right? A tool for your general lifestyle. And I always say, you pick a career, you pick a lifestyle. So what type of lifestyle do you want to live? And how is your job facilitating that lifestyle? So in some cases, it is moving abroad. And then you might want to pick a job where you can live abroad. And most obvious case of that would be people who are teachers online, tutors online, where they teach kids maybe English online to foreign students, and those aren't the most high-paying high-paying jobs you can do online, but some people do that and they live in a cheaper third world country, right? And in that case, they're smart because they use their job as a tool to allow them to live their lifestyle. If you're earning a high salary in a corporate job, your job should be a tool so you can save and invest that money to live your lifestyle. If you want the big house, you can go for that. If you want to retire early, you can go for that. But your job is a tool. It's not your identity. You shouldn't be like, oh, that's the only way I can live my life, right? Now, the other thing is exiting broken social contracts, and there's many ways of doing this. I made a series of videos about this a few months ago about how the social contract is broken. So if you just YouTube search on my channel social contract, you'll see the series of videos. It's a very important meme, and I've got it here actually. I just want to show it to you briefly. Now, you want to exit social contracts that don't work for you. And I know it's easier said than done, but in some cases it could be toxic relationships, negative family members, relationships with women that aren't working for you. You could get a divorce, whatever that would be. In all the type of social contracts that aren't working for most men. In many cases, it is toxic friends who are just time wasters and negative people. But the main social contract you'd want to escape is if you're working in a situation where you're paying a lot of tax, as you can see here, to foreign countries and their safety. You're paying for maybe migrants who aren't working so they can have a big family and you can't even afford to buy a house, but they're getting a free house and they're having 5 kids on the government's benefit system, the government handout system, while you can't even afford to do the bare minimum and support yourself. And then you've got your boomers who are making a lot of money from pension schemes and things like that, and they can live a comfortable life. The general point here is, if this is the situation you're in, how can you escape that? Whether it's building your empire and going solo and not focusing on the social status again, maybe becoming a freelancer, consultant, some type of self-employed person, and then also working hard to impress friends and family or women, right? A major key to success in this society is being able to turn your back on it and build your own scorecard. Now, going back to defining what success actually is, if you're building your own scorecard, not society scorecard, you should think about how much you want to be able to save and invest, not how expensive your car or watch is, right? So your measure of success isn't, oh, I've got a $5,000 Rolex. The message of success would be, I've been able to invest $5,000 this month, right? It's not, I've got a $5,000 Rolex, it's I've invested $5,000 this month, right? And there's many different ways you can look at this. That's something I cover in more detail in some of my courses and coach content. Is having a day at the end of the month where you go asset shopping. I call it the ASS day, the asset shopping strategy day, just to be funny about it, is where you take the last Friday of the month and you make it triple F, Financial Freedom Friday, where you go, cool, you know what, I've saved this money, I've covered my expenses, I've put a bit of money to the side to have fun and spend time with friends, or you pay for every subscription service you might have. Then you're going to be like, oh cool, now I'm going to invest whatever money's left, however much it is, couple $100, couple $1,000, I'm going to invest it in whatever you're comfortable investing in. Of course, no investment advice, but I cover it in more detail in my coaching. You make that choice and you have an asset shopping day. That's what you should think about, not what watch can I buy, but really how much stock can I buy of whichever stock you want to invest in. Now, another way of looking at the scorecard of success is, for many people, it'd be how much time you have. How much time or money can you spend on what you want to do in your personal life, right? The scorecard could be, oh, you can save more money to put your kids through college. It could be have more time to spend on your side hustle or hobbies you have an interest in. For some people, that is, if you work part-time, if you work flexible hours, you want to maybe maximize the time you have to spend with your family too, right? It depends on what your scorecard is. Do you have enough money? Do you want less stress? Do you want to reduce your work hours? Do you want to have freedom to move and relocate? It doesn't have to be a flashy scorecard of, oh, everything has to be a material item. It could be determined by what you actually want. The next thing is purpose over pressure. Now, this is so important, and this is something I found through doing my career coaching. I'm more fulfilled by actually helping other men in their career than just playing office politics in the office, right? And completing lots of financial reports and playing the corporate game, right? I'm interested in really helping people. So that's closer to my purpose than maybe the pressure of putting on a fake mask or pretending being someone I wasn't, right? Having to play along with some of the woke ideology at work and things like that. So it's all about purpose over pressure, and that's something that takes time. Everything I say here takes time. I'm not selling you some kind of pipe dream you see online where they say, oh, if you listen to my instructions next month you'll be making 20k a month, right? What I'm really trying to do is say here, let's build a real lifestyle design that works for you with your career in mind, right? With your money making source in mind, even if it's self-employment. How do we make that match your lifestyle goals? Now, then we've got to think about the end goal, right? If you want to shift from the paycheck mentality to the wealth mentality, you have to have an end goal in mind and then build, right? If you're a man, the main thing you do in life is build. People talk about how men are protectors, men are providers, but the main thing we really do is just that one word there, build. You build a family, you build a business, you build a career, you build your house. When you're renovating your house, you're still building it and maintaining its particular build, right? Whatever that would be. So building is the key thing. And when I see what I'm doing and I see any successful men, they're building something. They built their career, they built their family, they're building the future of their family and their kids. They're building a lifestyle they want. If they are living abroad and they want to make more money online, how can we do that? So these are the type of things that matter, right? Building. And then, see, it's not just what you earn, it's what you keep building on, right? So you might have a negative experience at a particular company, but you're still building your career and building your skills at that company so you can move on and do what you want, whether it's working for another company for a short period of time, becoming a freelancer, whatever that would mean, right? So you want to learn the basics of investing, assets and things like that, just so you can continue to build in a direction that actually works for you. And that's when you reach the end goal here, which is wealth over a paycheck, right? So this is how you can invest regularly. You can set up automated investing, you can build a buffer so you can get smarter with your money and not just busy and not feel more and more pressure to be a provider. So the thing is right, what ends up happening is you have many men with these problems. If we just recap, they feel a silent financial burden to be a provider. Their status is tied to their earnings. They deal with a typical negative reaction where they feel shame and more pressure on themselves about competing with others. But then what they need to do is find a solution. And that's kind of the solution here, defining your success, reframing what you want, questioning whether you should be a provider to people who aren't really supporting you, setting boundaries with negative people and time wasters and people who are trying to use you for your money or your social status, using your job as a tool to exit social contracts, building a scorecard of what you actually want in life, financially, your career and your lifestyle, and then focusing on your purpose, reaching your end goal to build and have focused on wealth over a paycheck. Now, if you're focused on your freedom, you're focused on your financial freedom, if you click this link in the description, it's called the Career Code online course, and you will learn how to master office politics and protect your career growth, right? Most men, they work hard, but they never get free. I'll show you how to flip the script. In my Career Code program, you'll learn how to set financial boundaries, how to invest smartly, and how to turn your career into a tool for independence, right? So if you click the link in the description, you'll be able to get started with that. So thanks for listening. Let me know what you think about this. Do you feel the pressure as a man to be a financial provider to others? What do you think the solution is? What are your typical reactions? Because this is very real. It's just something that people don't want to talk about. Everyone wants to talk about women's problems or the baby boomers and how to fund their pensions. No one wants to talk about the working age, military age man and how they're dealing with a lot of pressure right now in this society. Thanks for listening, and 2 recommended videos on the screen right now. I'll see you in the next video.